I sometimes mistakenly say, instead of hospital room, I say hotel room. Because it was the first time in a decade, really, that I just could be alone and responsible for myself. And that there were people there who were going to take care of me. And, people started sending flowers, and the biggest bouquet of flowers was from my work. And that is a metaphor for how my life was going.
That's Erin Keating. The week before she turned 50, she was hospitalized and nearly died from COVID. And a lot of things in her life became crystal clear. At the time, Erin was the picture of success, but she was also telling herself a lot of lies. It took a dire illness and a midlife reckoning to launch a complete life reinvention.
And she noticed something along the way, that having it all as a woman is a myth, and it's a trap. And there aren't enough places in our media where women can talk about that.
There's not a lot out there that's really for us. There's not a lot out there that's by us, that's telling our real stories.
Fast forward to today, and Erin has started her own media company that makes content for women over 40. She also hosts Hotter Than Ever, an incredible podcast that digs into the unconscious rules those women are confronting and breaking.
This is our Valentine's episode. It's a love letter to anyone trying to find themselves after a long separation. Welcome to The Breakout, a show about smashing through life's little boxes and forging your own path. I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich.
And I'm Kelly Gunther. Carrie and I are people and change experts, best friends, and business partners. We've spent more than 25 years helping employees and leaders change. With love and a lot of laughs, we're here to empower you to live life on your terms. Our methods may seem a bit unconventional, but trust us, they will change your life.
Let's be real for a second. We know change can sometimes be scary. Heck, it even scares us. But staying the same can be even scarier. On The Breakout, we prove that you can escape expectations. And best of all, we show you how. All right, Erin, we already know you, but our listeners don't. So let's start. In a few lines, what did you break out of?
I start with the heavy hitters. Okay, I broke out of captivity. And by captivity, I mean marriage, a corporate career, a whole set of rules that I was living by that I wasn't even really aware I was living by. Yeah, I went through and am still going through a midlife reinvention.
Well, I can't wait to get to that. You mentioned Hotter Than Ever.
Yes.
It's your amazing show. Tell us about that concept and what topics you tackle.
Hotter Than Ever came about because I was a television executive for 20 years, helping to make other artists' voices, helping to amplify them and make their dreams come true. And I had really lost touch with my own voice as a creative person, as a thinker. And I wanted to talk about what it felt like to suddenly be free of all of these strictures that I had sort of consigned myself to. So I wanted to talk about what it felt like to feel good in midlife. And I think a lot of the messaging around midlife for women is like, oh, we're the sandwich generation. Oh, you're juggling too much. Oh, you've got stress and burnout. Oh, you're going through menopause. Oh, and that's horrible. And what are those hot flashes? Like my title is a nod to hot flashes because it's called Hotter Than Ever. I'm not yet in menopause, but I figured I have the podcast for a while. And it's also a nod to feeling, sexy and lit up and desirable to myself and to others in midlife. And so we talk about relationships, we talk about sexuality, we talk about career reinvention, we talk about the deep inner work of countering those negative voices in your head. We talk about all kinds of things, how to manage a transitional period in our lives when most of us didn't kind of think we needed to plan for this.
Right, right. And I think too, Erin, you mentioned that most of the conversations you were hearing were about the negative. That's what it sounds like.
Problem
The negative
solving.
of
Yeah.
menopause, and it was problem solving. And so it sounds like your conversations are more focused on being uplifting, talking about some of the positive things that can happen during this change.
Yeah. I say that Hotter Than Ever is pro pleasure, pro power, and profound.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So you mentioned that you were in captivity. Lots of things changed. So how did that come about?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'll start in a hospital room. I had been a television executive for 20 years. I had been married for 17 years. I was a type A overachiever, goody two shoes, just trying to check all the boxes, just trying to do life right. And by all accounts, from the outside, I was winning. I was winning. I had a big job helping to run the originals team at a social media platform. I was making more money than I had ever made. Went through an IPO. I got stock options. I had just bought a nice house. I was really proud of all the things I was accomplishing. I had like made it to the upper middle class in terms of my own achievements, right? And I had been married for a long time, unhappily, profoundly unhappy for probably 5 years. I had 10-year-old twins. I still have them. They're 13 now.
You didn't like just return
No,
them?
I got to keep them. And I was working so much and so hard and disregarding all the signals that my body and my mind were giving me because I just needed to get stuff done and I needed to be present as a mom and I was responsible for all the domestic labor. And, I would go to work and then I would come home and work and then on the weekends I would cry and have a hard time getting out of bed. And I really worked myself to such a place where when I got COVID, I was already vaccinated, but I let it go too long. And I worked from home. So I was like, well, I can work through this, right? Like we all work when we're sick. When you have those big jobs, you're not allowed to be sick. And you're home, you're fine.
You can just take a phone call in bed, even though you have a Kleenex stuffed in your nose and you're like, I could do it.
And you're hopped up on Dayquil. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I was like Dayquil, NyQuil.
Yeah.
So I ended up with COVID pneumonia and I had to check myself into UCLA. And they were like, right this way, ma'am. And they showed me to a room by myself in the back corner of the she's not going to die floor. And, I was the first wave of Omicron. So I'd been vaccinated, but I was not very functional. And they hooked me up to all kinds of things and they shut the door behind themselves. The doctor left the room and I was by myself in a room that was quiet and no one was allowed to ask me for anything. And it felt like Canyon Ranch. Honestly, I could have been at a spa. I sometimes mistakenly say, instead of hospital room, I say hotel room. because it was the first time in a decade, really, that I just could be alone and responsible for myself. And that there were people there who were going to take care of me, who were going to make sure I got well. And people started sending flowers, and the biggest bouquet of flowers was from my work. And that is a metaphor for how my life was going.
Yeah.
And I got better enough to go home. And my now ex-husband had spent those days alone, solo parenting our children. And he was losing his mind to such a degree that he picked a fight with me when he was coming to pick me up from the hospital. Over text. And I looked at my phone and I thought, well, that's not right. That's not right. Like we agreed in sickness and in health.
Yeah.
I need more care now than I've ever needed. I could have died. 1 million people had died at that point. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of the marriage for me. That was in August. 2 weeks later, I turned 50. Nothing like that number to catalyze change.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
Exactly.
God. You're like, okay, I've done the first half. And 6 months later, he had moved out. And 6 months after that, I got laid off.
Oh my gosh.
And I had this clean slate on which to rewrite my life story. And I decided to run with it. So I eat, pray, loved my way to Italy. I booked a retreat with a woman named Sherry Salata, who used to be Oprah's executive producer. And now she's kind of a guru in her own right. It was beautiful there. It was a bunch of other amazing women. And I started to dream about what I wanted to do next. And I also had been in a marriage where I had not had sex in 10 years. So I started to manage that as well. I started to decide to come back to myself. And so, that sort of started the next chapter of my life.
We'll get back to the interview after this quick break.
Let's face it, modern work life is complicated.
But good news, we're here for you. I'm Kayla Lopez.
And I'm Kyle Hagee.
And together, we've helped thousands of Morning Brew subscribers grow in their careers.
And now, as the co-host of Per My Last Email, we're bringing that advice straight to you each week with hot takes and tactics on how to succeed in every area of work.
Whether that's figuring out if you're being underpaid.
Or how to stand out in a remote work environment.
So join us each week on Per My Last Email on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
For the past 2 years, I have been doing the Hotter Than Ever podcast, publishing a Substack. I'm writing a book. I'm building partnerships. And I've been bootstrapping everything on my own and looking for ways to really become the Oprah of media for women in midlife. Because there's not a lot out there that's really for us. There's not a lot out there that's by us, that's telling our real stories, that's speaking to what really is going on with us in our lives. We are the most successful generation of women to have ever walked the earth. We are extraordinary. And this will be the wealthiest generation of women who have ever lived. That's something that makes me feel really hopeful when I feel like the culture really doesn't care about us and wants to make us invisible. I do not think we're invisible. I do not want to be invisible. I also think if we are invisible, invisibility is the superpower people want, because when you're invisible, you can do, here's a nice callback, whatever the fuck you want.
Aw, thanks,
That is
Erin.
the title of your book. I love it. I just came around to that. Yeah.
I know. Thank you.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm here to help us celebrate ourselves and to also dig deep and say, what is it that I really want? I spent the last 20 years, like a lot of women, doing all the things that you're supposed to do, wanting all the things that you're supposed to want. Do I want those things? How's that working for me? How's that working for you? And if you got to choose, which you do, what would you choose for the second half of your life?
Yeah. Erin, I have joked with plenty of mothers that you maybe just a slight illness where you go into the hospital.
Yes.
So no one can text you, right? So no, I don't want to be like super sick. Don't get me wrong, but just maybe a couple days in the hospital where no one can talk to you or text you. And you had that.
I had that. I watched TV. I listened to podcasts. Yeah.
You had it.
I spent time with myself.
Right.
And suddenly everything was quiet for the first time. And I was like, oh, hi, you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're here. Oh, interesting.
Erin, was that the light bulb moment, do you think, for you to say, things have got to change? Because you mentioned that your body was telling you, but you thought, no, I'm not listening to you now.
Oh, I ignored my body. I mean, my body and I did not have a good relationship.
Okay.
I felt like I was a head walking around, that my head was the useful part And that was really all I needed. And so from the neck down, I was not connected. I would see my colleagues go to yoga and do all these things, and I couldn't do self-care very well. I was in therapy, thank God, but I really couldn't do self-care. I couldn't make time for myself. And part of this last 2 years has been reclaiming my relationship with my body. And that has been a revolution, like for me, where I'm fit for the first time. I'm connected to my sensuality, my sexuality. Like I walk around in the world like a taxi cab with the light on, you know, and people can see that and they go, what's she doing? Wait, you're 53 years old? And I'm like, yeah. And I feel better than I've ever felt. Also, it helps that I have this brand that I feel like, well, I have to be hotter than ever.
Yeah. You're like, I put it out there.
I want to live into that.
So you're in the hotel suite, AKA medical hospital.
UCLA. Yeah.
Yep. And do you have this moment where you're like, things are going to change? And did you go home and say, yeah, we're divorcing, or did it still take a while?
No, it took a while. I came home and we just were fighting. Like he was so angry at me for almost dying. And I think what he saw in those couple of days was a life as a single father. I think he saw a really tough future for himself and he was really freaked out. You know, we had a huge fight the night of my 50th birthday. And I was like, there is nothing good here. Like something had to change. I was lying about the job and that I could manage the stress. I could not manage the stress. And I was lying that I wanted to be married to this person. And I had tried my hardest for the past 5 years to stay in it, to be in it. But my resentment would like squirt out in like not being nice to him when we had a dinner party in front of our friends, like really not awesome, like behavior that I am super embarrassed by. And, you know, he knew that and he felt it. And I just was so invested in what everything looked like from the outside in this having it all life. And so one thing that I really, really started to do after that moment at the UCLA hospital was to start telling the truth about how I was really feeling, about how things were working for me. I realized that I had been partially staying in the marriage because I had watched my parents' marriages fail. And I was like, well, I'm superior. I'm going to do it. You know, I'm going to do this thing that they couldn't do. I'm going to accomplish this thing that they couldn't accomplish. Well, no one cares. Like, true. That's not a thing. And I just started to shed this idea of like, I had this story about how I couldn't be a single mom. I was like, I watched my mom be a single mom. I saw how hard it was. And I just didn't want that for myself. And I had twins. And I had this crazy job. But, you know, eventually I changed that story.
And I think she's such a good example of, yeah, she's self-reflective, but not to the detriment of moving forward, embracing change, and being joyful in your own life.
And she has a very calming voice about herself too. I mean, she speaks from like a place of, I'm still trying to figure out, I don't know what the fuck, you know? Like, I almost feel like she doesn't know what each day is gonna bring. And so she's just like, well, bring it the fuck on. I will find out one way or the other. And either way, I will handle it. Because she knows what it's like to live under the constraints of a job that you don't love and a marriage that no one loves you and you're resentful. And that isn't a way to live at all.
I mean, the fact that she said it felt like captivity.
Yes.
If you've survived that and that's your perception of it, that it felt like that, then I feel like you have this confidence to be like, I can do anything because I survived that. I can handle the rest. So there is this confidence to her.
Yeah.
That is inspirational that, damn, all right, I could almost die too and bounce back and have even a better life and be hotter than ever. You're welcome, Erin, for that. Erin, I was just thinking of how you didn't listen to your body, but your body knew. Again, we talk about expectations in our book, right? And you're thinking, well, the expectation is I better have this marriage and it's going to be too hard to be a single mother. And what's so beautiful about what you said, Erin, is this, I started to tell the truth, how I felt and that release. And Kelly, I think about how we talk so much about you kind of just have to say it. Like, I don't want to do Thanksgiving dinner, right? Or I don't want to be in this marriage, or I don't want to, yeah. But we do it, especially as women. We do it because, well, we should be good girls, or people expect it from me. And the amount of stress. And I just think you're the shining case study of, no, I'm living my truth. I'm shedding those expectations. And it's so beautiful.
I had to. I mean, I had never had a near-death experience. And from talking to a lot of women on my podcast, I understand that illness is what it takes a lot of the time. We need to be woken up from all of the unconscious rules that we're following.
Yes.
Because we really don't want to break the rules. And I definitely was trained to throw myself under the bus and not have needs. I definitely was trained to self-negate. I struggle with that in relationships with men because that's where my imprinting is around that stuff. That's hard for me. In life, outside of my intimate relationships, I'm real good at that now. And I work really hard to stay connected to my gut, connected to my intuition, to listen to my body and how my body is responding to people and situations. I ask myself questions. I was in an environment last night and I was like, why am I feeling judgy, bitchy, shitty? And it was because the thing was a celebration of a new podcast that was being launched by a 27-year-old recent Berkeley graduate. And she was so self-assured, and she had filled this beautiful venue with beautiful people, and she had sponsors, and I was like fucking jealous.
Yeah.
That I had not been that person at 27. I literally was having this awful narrative in my head. The girl is lovely, absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And what she's doing is very interesting and great. I just am pissed that I'm not her. That's all.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's just, you're like, okay, now I own it.
And I can laugh at myself, which I was not able to do. No sense of humor about myself. Great sense of humor about everything else.
Yeah. That vulnerability, Erin, that's what I hear. And I know, Cal, we talk about being vulnerable, and that's hard.
I think the difference too is that going through the journey that you did, you're able to share what you did, the actions you took, how you felt in ways that 26-year-old or 27-year-old likely hasn't experienced maybe those things. And so as much as you might look back with some jealousy after having gone through what you went through, how did you preserve that momentum and keeping the momentum alive? Every day that you took an additional step once you made the decision, because I think that's sometimes where people are like, okay, so she made the decision and now life is good. But what about all the middle stuff? What about all the crap that happened? I mean, that was a lot to go through in a short period of time.
I'm still in the middle. And maybe we're always in the middle. Maybe there isn't a there. Maybe it's just about getting used to rolling with it and not resisting change, because the cooler you get with change, the happier you'll be. There's nothing else. Everything is change. I'm a person who makes things. So for me, the solution to everything is always make something. So in my career as a television executive and as an executive producer, my job was to find things and make the deals and develop them and then make a thing. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a podcast. Never done it before, but it's got to be easier than making a TV show. And also, it is the only media that doesn't have gatekeepers. And podcasting is part of the reason why it's so popular, is that people are able to have their own voices and it's not censored. And I did not want to have to go through getting permission from somebody else to speak my truth and to have the conversations I wanted to have publicly. And I have processed this journey publicly because I had felt silenced for too long, silenced by working for corporations and licensing my voice to them. I had not told the truth in my marriage. I had not spoken truth to power in my career. And I just wanted to talk about it. I studied theater as an undergrad. I had done one-person shows in my 20s. I had written autobiographical essays and published them in my 20s. And I had given up on that career, but I really wanted to get back to my own voice. And podcasting is literally that. And now I'm trying to embrace my gifts as a communicator, as a leader, as someone who's outspoken and hopefully funny, and who can be a voice, an advocate, and also provide some kind of relief, for women in midlife, and making something while I was doing mediation, while I was figuring out custody stuff, all the shit, while I was starting to date, I was in action and throwing myself at the world in a way that my 20-something self was never confident enough to do. And my 30 and 40-something self was too constrained to do. So I want to live like that. I want to throw myself at stuff. Consequences be damned. I think we are so cautious, but as a result, we don't give ourselves permission to really live fully.
Mm-hmm. What are you learning about the women that you're speaking with, regardless of age? What are you learning about them as they tell you their stories?
First of all, I love them. Like I've like up-leveled my friend group in such an amazing way through all of the relationships with the women that I have met, women that I just completely admire. I think first and foremost, we carry a lot, right? We carry a lot. And we also have a lot of professional and earned expertise. And so I'm learning literally the subject matter. Like in general, I like a woman with a PhD, I love a woman with a master's degree. I like a woman with a career that she created for herself, and a life that she created for herself, and something to say. So that's exciting, just to be able to hear these women manifest their own personal aspirations as career and as personal life. And also, I just love people who break the rules. Like I really do, because I am such a grade grubbing, suck up, sitting in the front row, pick me, straight A student. Like that is who I am. And in my heart, I'm like a punk rock rebel. I just want to be smoking weed and having sex. And so just so reconciling those things, that's a lot of what the podcast is about. And I'm trying to extract as much wisdom for my audience and for myself as I possibly can.
Erin, I think what it shows is that, we're a diverse group of people. And what you're doing is you're giving people a voice for topics, for discussions that they may not have even considered before or thought about or knew of, because they've been conditioned or told or thought to believe that life looks a certain way, when really it can look any way you want it to look.
Yeah.
And you're a testimony to that. So last question for you, Erin, because you captured me with, I busted out of captivity, which I love, is you have 1 minute with someone who's stuck and they want to break out. What do you tell them?
Well, they're not going to like hearing this. I'm going to tell them, what are you lying about? Figure out what you're lying about. Tell the truth. It's so hard. It's so hard. It feels so high stakes. Oh my God, if I say the truth, everything will fall apart. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But I think you can't break out of a situation or a relationship or a dynamic or a job or a life if you're lying. The lies serve to keep us in place. The lies serve to protect us, perhaps, or at least that's our maladaptive way of protecting ourselves. And either you're going to take that on or you're not going to take that on. But also, one of the benefits of midlife is when your estrogen drops, your desire to accommodate the group drops as well. And That's why you hear a lot of women in midlife talking about, I don't have any fucks left to give. You know, put it on a mug. What I believe is you actually have all the fucks to give, but you get to give them where you want to give them and stop giving them where you don't want to.
Amazing, Erin. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for being vulnerable and for showing what it really truly does look like, the good, the bad, the ugly, and in kind of embracing it all.
The ugly's fine.
Yeah.
You know, the ugly is okay. We're human beings. It's part of us. Like, there's just going to be yucky stuff. You can't keep it clean all the time.
Yep.
So grateful to you. Thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you for the work you do. Thanks for having this podcast, for writing your book. Yeah, I'm grateful for you.
Thank you, Erin. I feel like we'll work together somehow. I don't know how.
I think our podcast are ways to get the information out. And I think, honestly, this is where, considering our political climate and what we're dealing with, there are even more reasons now why women have to rise up and stand up for what's right and to be their own advocate, because there aren't a lot of people advocating for us right now. And there probably won't be in the future. And so we have to find a way to unite, come together, and fucking deal with the shit, because it is not right for us to be in a position where we are. It's not right to have girls grow up with rights that we were able to enjoy for a period of time, and now they don't have the opportunity to enjoy, and they have to be fearful. And so we can do better. And as women, I know we can do better, and we have to do better.
And that's why I love Kelly Gunther. She says it, she means it, we can do better, and our voices are really important, and we're not fucking invisible.
That was our conversation with the inspirational Erin Keating, who continues to be hotter than ever. And this is The Breakout.
Kelly and I are in the business of breaking free, being brave, and living boldly. We're here to inspire you to be the badass you are meant to be. Coaching and consulting is kind of our thing, and we're really good at it. Connect with us at abrachigroup.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to The Breakout so you never miss a new episode. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And please leave us a review. Reviews help more people find the show, connect with us, and live a more authentic life. I'm Kelly Gunther.
And I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich. See you next time.